What's up, y'all? Kim here. We recently had the XP boost released in Season of Discovery, so now you're getting 2x XP essentially. So I wanted to make a video giving you an idea of what these specific specs and classes, you'll notice it's just DPS, no healers and tanks, also no Boomy and Rep Pal. I might have missed another one here or there. But this is the main top DPS classes, so I figured I'd cover those and talk about what they really look like at 40. So we're talking about what they bring to raid as far as DPS and buffs. We're talking about open world farming, how well are they doing in that regard. Rune acquisition. Now this is a big one for me. After getting some of the runes on my Druid, it was just super painful, and the thought of doing that on an alt just did not interest me, at least for now. So I wanted to include that on here for those of you that are thinking, hey, I want a build that is not using some of these other annoying runes or a Dark Rider rune. And then I've also got your cookie cutter rotation, reviewed some Warcraft logs for each of these, so it may not be the same thing everyone's using, but it should be pretty close, and it should be, the same buttons in general that they're hitting. So anyway, that's what I'll be covering in this video. I hope you enjoy. Let's hop right in. Now this video is pretty much in order of highest to lowest DPS as I'm listing these out, but just to give you an idea of a reference point for these, we've got Fire Mage absolutely blasting at the top, Enhancement Shaman as well. I really wish I was Horde. I would love to be playing Enhancement Shaman or Ele right now. We have Melee Hunter still doing quite well at third, Ele Shaman, Warlock, Warrior, Balanced Druid, which isn't in this video, Shadow Priest, Rogue, Arcane Mage, which is also not in the video, and Feral Druid. Now, Paladins, Range Hunters, and Frost Mages are also not in the video, so rip, guys. So anyway, let's get started with Fire Mage. Fire Mage is going to be your highest DPS class currently, like I just showed. They also bring water and improve Scorch. Improved Scorch increases fire damage, which will be helpful for your Warlocks and your Elemental Shamans. We also have the AI buff that they normally bring. Now, as far as open world for mages, I don't think I really need to talk too much on this. Everyone really knows that they're kind of unrivaled in AoE, and that same thing is true in Season of Discovery as Classic. With Living Flame, Living Bomb, basically really anything. There's so many options that they have. Frost Nova, Blizzard, whatever. So mages are amazing in open world. They also have portals and teleports, which is just an amazing quality of life to have, and you can make money selling portals. So for mage runes now, they are all relatively easy, which is about, I think, in my estimation, about 10-15 minutes or less for each of the easy ones. And then we have spell power, and this one's going to be pretty brutal. There's 24 books that are in the open world, and you have to collect 20 of them for this rune. So if you did the Icy Vein rune last phase, or this phase, whatever, it's just an extended version of that. So if you already have that, you won't have to do as much work for this. Obviously, your teleports are going to be very helpful here because you're going to be running all over the place. Now, for the rotation itself, you're essentially going to be wanting to cast Pyroblast on pull as the tank's pulling. Ideally it leaves your hand as soon as he pulls. Then we have Living Bomb that you're going to want to keep up. It's last 12 seconds, so you'll keep reapplying that. And then we have Living Flame, 1 minute cooldown, but it lasts for 20 seconds, does tons of damage. You'll want to drop that as you can, assuming the fight's going that long. And then we have Scorch Spam, and that's basically what the Fire Mage is. Now, the caveat to that is we have a rune here called Hot Streak. Basically, when you crit 2 times in a row with really any of your fire spells, your next pyro is instant cast. So you're looking to spam Scorch and launch off those pyroblasts whenever that proc occurs. Next up, we have Enhancement Shaman. Now, they bring totems, so we got Tremor Totem, we got Strength Totem, we've got Wind Fury, so a lot of really good value coming out of Shamans in raids. They do lack AoE in the open world. Now, that doesn't necessarily make them a bad farmer. They have good sustain with Shamanistic Rage as far as their mana, and they can heal themselves, and they have good damage as well. So I would say that they're about average, maybe slightly above average. Because they can just keep killing forever, but not exactly the most exciting open world class. Now, as far as their runes go, there's one that's going to be a problem for you, or long, and that is Maelstrom Weapon. Now, I've seen people complain about this a lot and how long it was. I think people were saying it was 6 hours. I think it did get adjusted I looked at the actual guide itself, and it looks like you do have some steps and some traveling, but also there's drop rates involved. So I think maybe those were the thing that was adjusted. You may want to look up a full guide specifically for that rune if annoying runes is a turnoff for you. So just prepare for that. And then let's talk about the rotation for these guys. Now, you're going to want to go ahead and do a lightning bolt or a chain lightning on pull just to make use of that time. And then you're going to go into a storm strike. And then I don't think the order of this necessarily matters, but Earth Shock and Lava Lash is what people were using typically. And then you'll just repeat that cycle essentially with Storm Strike, Earth Shock, and Lava Lash. Now, during that time, you'll be stacking your Maelstrom weapon, and you can use those on Chain Lightning to get additional damage from that. I went ahead and included Elemental Shaman next, even though they're below Melee Hunter and in 4th DPS, just to keep the Shaman specs together. So we have the same totems that I talked about earlier. We also have pretty good burst potential in the open world. You know, they have their standard Elemental Mastery, Chain Lightning combos, and they have Overload to pack a lot of punch. So they can do good bursts, but not really the best for farming or anything like that. They have spell pushback issues, and so just not the best. I think enhancement would be better in the open world. As far as their runes are concerned, though, you just got wins across the board. All these are really easy to obtain. So if that's a problem for you, long runes, Elemental Shaman could be a good pick. Now, as far as their rotations concerned, we've got Lightning Bolt on pull. We're going to be keeping up Flame Shock at all times, and then we're going to want to make sure that we're keeping Lava Burst on cooldown, followed by keeping Chain Lightning on cooldown. Now, at that point, we'll be using Lightning Bolt because we'll have nothing else to use, but you also have procs from Power Surge, which will essentially give you a free Lava Burst. It'll reset the cooldown and give you a free Lava Burst, so you'll be using that as it procs, and that's why you want to make sure you're keeping Flame Shock up at all times. Next, we have Melee Hunter, which is the 3rd best in DPS. The main thing they're bringing to Raid is Aspect of the Lion, which is a 10% stat buff, just like Blessing of the Kings. Really nice to have this. Obviously, 10% stats on 10 members is pretty incredible, just as a side buff there. Now, they're running BM spec with this melee build most of the time, and that is just going to lend itself pretty well to open world. Having a stronger pet has historically been great, so you can just go around, let your pet pull, sustain, conserve your mana, use Aspect of the Viper if you want. So they don't have, obviously, the volume that a mage would have, but they can just continuously pull, similar to your Enhancement Shaman. For their runes, we have our first instance of the Dark Rider quest chain or rune chain, where you have to get, I think, 7 orbs around Azeroth. That took me, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. It depends if you can find people. I'm not sure exactly how popping off it is now. It probably is doing pretty well because people are leveling. But other than that, the other runes are easy. And it's just like the rotation, which is also easy, which is just spamming Raptor Strike and Flanking Strike. So, pretty boring one here, but it is a unique build to Season of Discovery, at least, if compared to Vanilla. So if this is something that interests you, go for it. Next up, we have Warlocks. Now, they're 5th on DPS, and what they bring to Raid is Hellstones, Soulstones, and those all-important summons. So you really ideally want to have one of these in your Raid. Now, as far as the open world goes, I think Warlocks are great. There's a ton of different options that just swapping your runes can help you out with. They have Affliction with Haunt and the improved Drain Life that's channeled, and they can just keep dotting and healing. So really, the world is their oyster for Warlocks. They also have Fear for PvP servers, which is fantastic, and meta as well. Now, for their runes, they're the worst one we've seen so far. They've got 3 easy ones, and then we have 2 that are longer. We've got the Dark Rider rune again, or chain, I should say, and then we have Grimoire of Synergy, which is, it looks to be about a medium length by itself, but it requires you to have the meta rune before it. So if this is a fresh alt, that's something you're going to want to consider. Now, the meta rune isn't as difficult to get now that we can go up to level 40. It's much easier and quicker and soloable. So keep that in mind, but definitely a little more difficult on the runes here. Now, as far as their rotation's concerned, essentially you're going to be using Rain of Fire to keep up Lake of Fire, that 40% fire damage debuff. on the target, and then you're going to be wanting to use Incinerate, which will give you a 15% fire damage buff. So you'll want to keep both those up, and then you're going to want to keep Chaos Bolt on cooldown. That's your big damage ability. And then we're going to be keeping Immolate up, and then just continuing to keep up all those three, right? So Lake of Fire, Incinerate, and Immolate, and then Chaos Bolt on cooldown. At 6th place, we have Warriors. They bring Battle Shout, Rallying Cry, and Sunder Armor to a raid. Now, they're not great in the open world, but their main raid spec is arms, so they're using big two-handers, which means they'll be able to use Sweeping Strikes and Whirlwind in the open world, so they're pretty good at handling those small to medium-sized pulls, like 4 mobs or so. So that's something to note. They're also very gear dependent, so if you're decked out of Nomer, you're going to be doing just fine for yourself in the open world. As far as runes go, they also have it relatively easy, but the same as before, they do have a Dark Rider rune, and that's going to be the one that enables your slam. As far as the rotation itself, it's pretty basic. You have Mortal Strike, which is a 6-second cooldown. You also have Slam, which with precise timing is an instant cast, but a 6-second cooldown as well. So you're basically just using those two back and forth, and then dumping your additional rage with Heroic Strike and Whirlwind. Skipping right over Boomkin because I already have a Druid and have no interest in Boomkin, so I didn't do the research on it. Let's talk about Shadow Priest. Now they bring a ton of utility, mostly coming from Vampiric Embrace. This will heal based on the shadow damage they deal. Now it doesn't make up for a whole healer or anything like that, but it does provide just a consistent flow of healing that isn't negligible. Like we're talking decent healing coming from these guys. I think it's like about 40% or 30% of a normal healer depending on the fight. So very nice. They also bring Fortitude, obviously. They have shields, Fear Ward in some cases. So very powerful there. Shadow Priests also have strong dots and burst damage for the open world. They're similar to Warlocks. You can do, Void Plague and Shadow Word Pain. There's also a rune that makes Shadow Word Pain hit multiple targets. So they can do kind of some dotting and running around. They also have Mind Seer, which is an AoE, but because it's channeled, it's not really great unless you're in a group or have someone tanking for you. But I wouldn't say they're bad in the open world. I'd say they're pretty decent. Now for runes, they have no Dark Rider rune, 2 medium-ish runes, and the other ones are easy. These are a decent amount of traveling, like to Desolace and Booty Bay and back and forth. So not the worst, but maybe like 30 to 45 minutes to grab these. So for the rotation, you're going to want to be using Homunculi on pull into Vampiric Embrace, Void Plague, and Shadow Word Pain. Now you're going to want to keep these up at all times throughout the fight. And then from there, you're going to be doing 3 Mind Spikes. Now this will increase the crit chance of your Mind Blast by 30% for each one. So if you do it 3 times, that's 90%, almost guaranteeing your crit on your Mind Blast. And for the top parsers and stuff that I was looking at on Warcraft logs, that's going to be followed up with the Shadow Word Death. Now this will depend on your group and if you're going to kill yourself and all that fun stuff, so don't just blindly do this, but that's what the best people were doing, so let's go to the next one. In 9th place, you have Rogue, which is probably the class I'm least likely to pick as my class to level. They really don't have a lot going for them this phase. They pretty much only bring kick to raids, and they're not that great in the open world. Now, they do have stealth and pickpocket and a ton of stuns, vanish, and they're just a lot of fun. So if you're into just having a good time, then Rogue can still be it. But they're not great at some of the top items that you would probably be looking for in Phase 2. And as far as their runes are concerned, you have 2 easy ones and 3 that are medium. You have to run back and forth to SFK, and I'm assuming you would grab Deadly Brew and Envenom on your way to leveling. Those are pretty useful to have. So it would be Shadow Step and Master of Subtlety, which is a decent amount of running and just kind of annoying, but nothing like some of the other ones, not as bad as Dark Riders or anything like that. As far as the rotation's concerned, essentially you have Mutilate, which is generating 2 combo points. So you can either start with an ambush into Mutilates or just Mutilates. And what I was seeing these rogues do was on Warcraft logs was doing Envenom first, and I'm assuming that's to stack these poisons up quickly and then get on to Slice and Dice, because we get a new rank of Slice and Dice. I think it's level 42, so it's still the weaker version of Slice and Dice that we had at 25. So they do keep that running, but it's only after they get their initial Envenom going. So you're going to want to go ahead, get your mutas off into your Envenom, into 2 mutilates, into your Slice and Dice, and then you're going to want to be using your mutilate up until 5 combo points, where you're going to then want to Envenom, and then you're going to want to fill Slice and Dice as it falls off. And that doesn't have to be a 5 combo pointer. I think it 3 to 4 and sometimes 5 is where you're going to be wanting to use Slice and Dice. Last on my list, I've included Feral Druid, because this is what I'm playing now. It's really best not to look at the DPS on these. They can do well in the first 2 bosses with power shifting as they're short fights, but for me, Feral Druid's not really about yourself and solo DPS. It's about bringing Wind Fury on Alliance and on Horde if you don't have a Shaman, which you'd be crazy not to bring them. They're not really the best farmers. They are safe. They can kill a lot of stuff and heal themselves back up, so it's a nice consistent grind, but it's not that great. I think Enhancement Shaman would just be doing what they did better in pretty much every regard. As far as their runes go, we have another Dark Rider rune here with King of the Jungle, which is an absolutely essential rune for them. Now, for the rotation, you're going to want to be using Fairy Fire Feral on the initial pull, followed by a Mangle, and then getting that Savage Roar up to increase your attack damage by 30%. And then you'll usually use Berserk at this point, along with your Tiger's Fury, to spam out a bunch of shreds and get your 5 combo points to drop your rip on them. And then you'll do some more shreds and get a higher combo point Savage Roar refresh, like a 4 or 5. After that, you're going to continue to shred and keep your Savage Roar up and then rip as you can. And that's all I wanted to cover in the video. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing, leaving a like, a comment. I look forward to making more videos for you guys. It's a lot of fun. Work's been kind of crazy, and hopefully I'll be also doing some live streams soon. I'd like to get all my characters to level 40. But anyway, that's it for me for now. I'll see you guys soon. Cam out.